Jenny.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to episode 52 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
We like to dig, and I'm telling you, dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch. Well, we're going to dig deep, Nance, because we're going to Afghanistan.
You're not kidding. This month, it's all things Afghanistan.
Yes, we are.
And today, we get to interview Mr. Sher Jan Ahmadzai. We are going to be talking about Afghanistan, which is the initial setting of the novel Sparks Like Stars by Nadia Hashimi. Of course, so much of the book, even those parts that take place in the United States, are all about Sitara's experience in Afghanistan, her reconciling and integrating that experience into her life, and then her return to Afghanistan. So we wanted to invite Sher Jan on the front porch.
Sher Jan serves as director of the Center for Afghanistan Studies at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Prior to leaving Afghanistan, he served as director of presidential schedule at the Office of the President of Islamic Republic of Afghanistan and was responsible for managing President Karzai's day-to-day schedule.
Unbelievable.
During his time at the palace, he was able to foster and maintain professional relations with government, community, and political leaders across Afghanistan and across the world.
Yes.
He is a regular contributor and commentator on BBC, Pashto, and Dari programs, as well as a number of other media services. And we have him here on our front porch.
I know. I'm so excited. I think people are really going to be interested in his personal journey as well, and his depth of understanding of what has gone on in Afghanistan, what's currently going on in Afghanistan. Just absolutely fascinating.
All right, Nance. Well, let's get to it.
All right. Welcome to the front porch, Sher Jan.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we're just so thrilled to have you. We are interested in learning more about the history of Afghanistan and what is happening there today. Could you tell us a little bit about Afghanistan and what it was like growing up there?
I left Afghanistan initially first time. I was quite young, straight out of our village after the Soviet invasion, actually.
Okay.
I grew up as a refugee in Pakistan. There's a twist in the story. We went with my family. We fled Afghanistan after the Soviet invasion and lived for 20 years in Pakistan till I came back in early 2002 back to Kabul. I had heard a lot of stories about our village, our relatives, and the lives they had. That was better than what I had as a refugee in Pakistan, of course. But 20 years over there and then going to school, grade school there, and coming back to Kabul, starting to work for the government of Afghanistan, a new government, was a totally different experience for me because Afghanistan entered a totally new chapter of its many chapters. Post 9/11 was another one of those chapters when an internationally supported government was there, established by the assistance of international community. And Afghans were really happy after a very difficult era of Taliban, which was much harsher economically than what we see right now in Afghanistan. Kabul city itself, as I remember, was almost a ghost town during Taliban, actually. Because I visited Kabul city during Taliban also a couple of times. It would turn dark, no electricity much after 6, as soon as the sun goes down. It was not populated at all. But after 9/11, everything changed. The country started to grow back. Economy got better. Jobs came back. Of course, it was a huge presence of international forces, international community that impacted the different lifestyle, brought different lifestyle. But Afghanistan progressed continuously. Afghanistan was a different Afghanistan than what it was under the first time Taliban were in control. Kabul city that was built for probably 250,000 people now has almost 3, 4, 5 million people. So the growth was exponential in a way that you see it. When I was there before early 2007, it was growing. Till now, it's grow. I think it stopped because of economy and the conditions in Afghanistan are different now. But it has become a different country compared to what it was 30 years ago, for example, when there was a civil war. And now it's a different country itself again. But the Afghanistan that I remember were two Afghanistan. One was before the Soviet invasion that I remember a little bit, not much because I was too young. And I only remember our time in our village and my transition through Kabul city to Pakistan. That's the only part I remember, transiting through the city. Where I remember my cousin was born in Kabul city when we were going to Pakistan.
Oh,
Wow.
That is memorable. My goodness.
Yeah, so we were at somebody else's house when he was born. And I remember crossing into Pakistan, that a little bit, I do remember that. And then, of course, my life in Pakistan. And then coming back to Afghanistan, that's a different style. I was in my 20s when I came back to Kabul, started working for the government. And there was a different Afghanistan that I had. But I always heard about stories of pre-Soviet invasion. It was a golden era of development before 1978 coup, and then 79, the Soviet invasion.
Yeah, so our book takes place right before the coup.
Yeah.
And she creates a lot of visual life of what it was like before the Soviets took over in the coup. And then she goes back and she sees a very different Afghanistan from what you remember as a small child to going back in the 2000s. How is it different? It sounds like it's bigger.
Well, in 2000s, when I went there, Kabul city was a destroyed city. The only tall building that stood in Kabul was the 18-story building of the Ministry of Communication. And that was also a bullet-riddled building. The second tallest was the 14-story building that belonged to Ministry of Agriculture or something. The rest of the city was, especially the western portion of the city, was totally destroyed, flattened, actually. The Afghan American University area, the Darul Aman Palace area, the posh area that when U.S. Peace Corps volunteers used to live in west of Kabul, that was no longer a part of the town that you would recognize. It was just ruins. Kabul University was in ruins. I visited Kabul University post 9/11 and before 9/11 when Taliban were there because I wanted to study, and I went there. So that's why when I say that part of the town was completely destroyed in civil war between different factions of Mujahideen of that time. The pre-1978 Kabul that later on I saw in pictures was non-existent.
Yeah.
Those wide streets, those little bit busy streets, of course they're busy right now, streets were no longer at that time. Even in post 9/11 when I was in Kabul, electricity was a luxury actually. Phones were luxury. And I was one of those lucky people that I had a phone with a SIM card because I worked for an office that required me to carry a phone. Landlines were non-existent. Pre-78 Kabul had electric buses, or even in 80s that it had electric buses. I saw the poles on the streets that would carry the cables for electric buses, but nothing else. I did see the damaged buses parked at their parking place, but nothing more than that. I do remember people telling me that some of the buses were driven by women. Now imagine that of Kabul of that time.
Yeah.
So all those things. I mean, I always thought Kabul was much advanced when I heard about electric buses. Oh, buses run on electricity, and we had them in Kabul city. So I was surprised and proud. Oh, our city was much advanced compared to the city where I grew up in Peshawar, Pakistan, which was completely different. The streets in Kabul, I found them wider and more beautiful, even though they were destroyed. So the city itself was designed in a different way many, many years ago, so almost more than half a century ago. Mind you that there were almost two kinds of Afghanistans pre-78. One was rural Afghanistan, one urban Afghanistan. Many of us have heard stories about urban Afghanistan. from travelers, from visitors. We have heard a little bit from rural Afghanistan, which was still poverty-stricken Afghanistan. Poverty was at high. But life was better than we had under Soviet invasion, because rural Afghanistan was the countryside that was affected the most by invasion, because the resistance started from rural Afghanistan and the killings happened to be in rural Afghanistan, just like in the last 20 years. The war and the Taliban attacks started from rural Afghanistan, so the more affected population was the rural population. Everybody started to come to the cities for seeking refuge in peaceful areas. So almost before 1978, there was no war, but there was almost two kinds of Afghanistans. This divide between rural and urban areas were so huge even then. Many books and pictures that you see from those Peace Corps volunteers or English language teachers or others, Europeans who went to Afghanistan, you would see of Kabul city, women in skirts and going to schools, electric buses, beautiful buildings, beautiful cars, shops, food shops. That's all city. The rural countryside was way different. People were much poorer than what you saw in the pictures. But there was hope. There was peace. There was no war. Even if you were in poverty, there was no war. There were opportunities for people to go to other places. But war changed all the dynamics in the fabric of society. A lot of people from rural areas migrated or fled to Pakistan or Iran because those were the areas under attack constantly.
I'm assuming your family's decision to flee Afghanistan, were you in rural or were you in the Kabul?
We were in rural. The reason why we fled is a different story of my personal, because we lost 3 members of our family because of that. And then we had to flee Afghanistan, go to Pakistan.
From the war you did?
Yes. So there was pre-invasion. My dad was arrested by the communist government in early 1979. We lost him. Unknown till a few years back when I was checking the list of those 5,000 people who were killed in Kabul, and I found his name in the list.
Oh my, I'm so sorry.
My uncle was killed by the Soviet soldiers. My grandma, they say that I was also with her, but I don't remember that scene, that we found his bullet-riddled body in the rice field.
Oh.
And then my grandma couldn't recognize the face, but he recognized him from his feet in clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how she with my aunt, found her, and we brought him back and buried him in a graveyard. And finding out about the news that 2 of his sons were gone, my grandfather had a stroke.
Oh my!
In a matter of months, we lost him too. And my family couldn't take him to a cemetery to bury the dead body, so they had to bury him on our own property, right next to our house. And I visited that a number of times later on, last time when I lived in Kabul. So many of the Afghans had similar stories like I did from rural Afghanistan. And so not having a male member in the family that could support, and the rural Afghanistan was always constantly under attack, we had to flee to the city and through the city to Pakistan because others had done so. And they said it's better to go out. So my grandma, my mother, my aunts, and my uncle, who was almost 8, 9, or 10 years older than I am, he was the one who could say, okay, he is almost the guardian of the family at that time, 12-year-old kid.
Wow.
My goodness. So what brought you back to Afghanistan then after living for many years in Pakistan?
I grew up with a feeling and thought that I am a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
And why am I a refugee? What does a refugee mean? Which means you are not in your own country.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I from? Always had this idea of, always were told that Russians are out, there will be peace and security in 1989. This peace never came. And everybody was ready. Soviet Union is out, there will be peace and all the refugees will go back. That didn't come. So with this hope was, we're going to go back. That's our country, which made me go back to Afghanistan post 9/11 and started working for the government at an office. I started as a translator and then ended up as the schedule manager for the President of Afghanistan.
That seems like that's a pretty exalted position. What was that like being the president's scheduler?
It was exalted position. I was right in the middle of the hub of the government of Afghanistan. I was managing his schedule. And I was distributing his daily schedule with security at the palace, the protocol department who were receiving the guests. I would every day, I was supposed to be there before the president came to his office and go after he left.
Oh,
So that was almost a 12-hour shift.
That's a long shift.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So because as soon as he leaves, then I would print out the schedule for the next day and I hand it out to the security people for tomorrow's guest list, who are coming and what time. So they know at the gates and they check the IDs and everything.
Well, I guess you got to meet a lot of interesting people in that job.
I did actually. I met President Bush first time there in Kabul.
is that right?
I met the Prime Minister of India there. Actually, I spoke at that event. I was doing the announcement of the deals being signed. I met the Pakistani Prime Minister at the same room next time. I was doing the announcement in English. And I met many others, actually, dignitaries from around the world who came. And I was present at the event where the last king of Afghanistan died.
Wow. What an interesting life. I heard that you also met our author, Nadia.
Yes, I did. She and I are great colleagues. Nadia and I sit on the Afghan American Foundation board for the last almost 2 years. We have met a number of times. We meet almost weekly through Zoom, now bi-weekly, and discuss the Afghan American Foundation affairs. We are a volunteer organization. All of the board members are volunteer members. We are working for the betterment of the lives and awareness about the Afghan American society here in the United States. Most of our activities, actually today we had an opportunity to do an activity with a commissioner of the United Nations who is responsible to report on the human rights in Afghanistan, Richard Bennett. He's from somewhere in Europe. So we hosted an activity in Washington, D.C. for that. So it was a public event, also live on Zoom. And that's how I know Nadia. I did not know Nadia. I visited her house. We had a retreat a year and a half ago. We visited her house. I visited her husband, her kids, wonderful family, and beautiful house in Maryland.
Well, that's so great. What wonderful work you're doing as Americans who are passionate about their people and their culture and helping immigrants to the United States.
You mentioned the UN. The UN, of course, recently had a big report about Afghanistan and talking about the freedoms for women and girls that have contracted over the last year or two under the Taliban. Can you help us understand why the Taliban is so focused on reducing women's rights?
It's a very difficult question to answer because to many audience and to many listeners, this might seem like as if this is the mentality of every Afghan or the Afghan society, because there is the stereotypical mentality about women being subjugated or their prisons contracted in society. Sometimes it's difficult for me to answer why they're doing that, because from a religious perspective, there is nothing that would justify such a policy. From our culture perspective, there's also nothing that would justify that girls be totally eradicated from social life or women be totally eradicated from social life. When in our culture in Afghanistan, we have seen women working in the fields, helping brothers and husbands, doing a lot of housework outside the perimeters of a house. And now when this comes down, they're not even allowed to go outside the house. That's not part of the culture. The culture was different. So people do ask these questions from Taliban themselves. They also don't have an answer. This misogynistic idea of and belief that the leadership has about women not going out is, I cannot fathom that. Not just me as a Muslim, but many other Muslims around the world are still questioning, where in Islam do we have this idea that women's life should be eradicated from social life, from outside? So there's a mix of these feelings and emotions, why they're doing so. To me, it's as if the core of the leadership believe in such an idea, a very strict interpretation of Islamic laws or a hadith or the Quran, which is not practiced in the rest of the world, but in Afghanistan, where we see untraditional way of dealing with things that are not in our culture, not in our religion. I can't say why, because I cannot justify it myself. Mm-hmm. It's just a dark belief that the leadership has about why women should not be allowed to go out. Even Taliban members, they have contradictory views about this. And it's just the leadership and many others in the government of Taliban who believe that women's lives should be eradicated from outside the house.
Interesting.
And they have this old draconian thoughts and beliefs and policies about women in general public, which is completely, I can understand why, to be honest.
Back to you. What led you to immigrate to the United States?
My studies.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. I worked at the office of the president as a high school graduate.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
I did not have a formal 4-year degree before that. The only thing I had was I could speak English because I was an ESL teacher for 4 years in Pakistan before I came to Kabul in early 2002. So that was my advantage.
That made you valuable. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's how I ended up working for an office that was run by the very recent last president of Afghanistan.
Are we talking about Hamid Karzai?
No, Ashraf Ghani.
Okay.
First, I worked for Ashraf Ghani when he was not president. And then from his office, I moved to the office of the president of Afghanistan at that time in 2003. And in 2003, Hamid Karzai was the president. So I worked with the proper president.
Yes.
And then I was working before that with the person who would become president afterwards.
Wow. You came here to the United States to get your bachelor's and master's degrees.
My bachelor's first. I had some savings, $10,000. And when I came to Omaha, Nebraska, straight from Kabul to study my 4-year bachelor's degree in international studies, my $10,000 were gone in my first semester. And I was said, oh God, what do I do now? I left a job. I left my family. What do I do now? So I came to the director of the Center for Afghanistan Studies, my predecessor. And he was the dean of the international studies too. And I said, his name was Tom. And I said, Tom, I ran out of money. And I think I should go back to Kabul because I have no money left. How am I going to pay for my next semester fee? And he said, wait, buddy, let's figure something out for you. So he got me a 60% scholarship. So then I started to pay resident fee, not international student fee. And on top of that, he got me a position as a student worker. So that's how I managed to pay my school fee. And then I also asked my wife to send me $1,000.
So you were married at this point?
I was married and I had 2 kids.
Oh,
my goodness.
Okay. They were in Kabul then?
They were in Kabul. My younger one was just born when I left him.
Oh.
He was a month old when I left him in Kabul.
Oh.
My younger one. He's now 15 and he just got his driver's permit.
That's fantastic. What a journey you've had professionally. Just a lot.
And my older one got his license. He's now 17.
Great. Now he can drive you around.
I left him when he was 2, actually, when I left him. I brought him back here in the United States next year.
Oh. From your vantage point of where you are now, what do you see as the biggest current challenges facing Afghanistan?
There are a lot of challenges facing Afghanistan right now. The biggest thing is Afghanistan is facing being a normal country for the Afghans. The Afghans are facing this enormous challenge of being an accepted member of the international community, as they were before August 31st, 2021. That is the biggest challenge. There are many challenges. There is a lack of a legitimate government. I'm not talking about the international legitimacy. I'm talking about the local domestic legitimacy that the current Taliban regime is facing. It's a government that came by force, and the one side just stopped fighting. The other side just took control of everything. So it's not something that they won. We, the Americans and the Afghans, just stopped fighting.
Right.
And left the ground to them, take over. So whatever they call it a win, a defeat of the United States. But whatever it was, the Afghans themselves are facing this conundrum of what to call this new era. A new era or another transition. So far, it looks like another transition that they have to go through. But it's a gruesome transition, unfortunately. It's costing lives and costing hopes, costing everything. So there's unknown future that the Afghans are facing right now. They don't know where is the country headed towards. They don't have no idea how Afghanistan would look like next year. They don't know if Taliban will last next year. The only thing they see is a more restricted life, authoritarian regime that has taken away many rights, personal rights, freedoms that they enjoyed 2 years ago. They're no longer there. For every Afghan, of all fields, of all groups, it doesn't matter if you're from the ethnicity where Taliban come from or not. It doesn't matter. If you're not aligned with their ideology, you're not one of them. And overall, in the last 20 years, they have done more damage to their own ethnic group than any other ethnic group in Afghanistan. Because they have always fought in the Pashtun-dominated areas. 80% of their fighting happened to be in the Pashtun-dominated areas. And 80% of the fight the international forces had was in the Pashtun-dominated areas. So those people would suffer where the fighting is. And all of them were Pashtuns in the last 20 years. Yes, other Afghans suffered enormously in that, but majority, the killings and the burnings and everything happened in the Pashtun-dominated areas where the population spoke Pashto. And Taliban, majority of Taliban, not all Taliban, were also Pashtuns. So they have done the largest disservice to their own community. And so did others. So did others to their own communities, unfortunately. The very immediate challenge right now in front of an Afghan would be, am I going to be able to feed my family next month? That is a big question for an Afghan. Unemployment has risen significantly. Poverty has gone larger significantly. Many more people are entering poverty.
Sher Jan, what do you wish more Americans knew about Afghanistan and its people?
I'm an Afghan American right now. What I would wish that my fellow Americans would like to know about Afghanistan is it's a beautiful country with beautiful people. It is not a country that gave refuge to Osama bin Laden. It is not the country of Taliban right now. It is the country of Afghans. And Taliban do not represent Afghans. Neither their ideology represent Afghans. We have to learn it from the Afghans, not the typical news sources that we have seen about war countries. Meet an Afghan. Go and see and learn about the problems they have been through. Know about their culture, their languages. You would find and you will find a very open heart of Afghans who are welcoming, but who are going through a emotional and spiritual transition that is unknown to them. If you have a neighbor who just came from Afghanistan, who came from Afghanistan 40 years ago, go and hang out with them. Learn about the country they were born in. It's different than what we hear, but when it becomes different and better when we talk about somebody that is from that area. In this case, Afghanistan. Go and sit with them, have a chat with them. Invite them over. Go over to their houses. Sip a cup of tea with them. Listen to their sorrows. Listen to what they went through. Listen what they can do, what capacity they have. How they can become a very productive member of our society here in the United States. Like I am one of those members. I went through all those different ups and downs in my life. I lost family members, 20 years of refugee, working for the president's office, the very highest office in the country, now working here in the United States, leading a center that has been here for the last 50 years. Actually, this year we're celebrating our 50 years of existence at the University of Nebraska Omaha. So there are many stories like I have learned about that. It's amazing, to be honest.
Can you tell us a little bit about your center and what you do?
Absolutely. The Center for Afghanistan Studies was established in late 1972. And this April, we are celebrating the 50 years of its existence in the University of Nebraska Omaha. The founder was a geologist by profession, and Afghanistan is a heaven for geologists. It's mountains. And he had some collections and books and all the stuff about Afghanistan, and he wanted to study more about Afghanistan. The co-founder was a geologist who was teaching in Afghanistan, who visited Afghanistan many times, who's going to be here for the 50th anniversary also.
Oh, that's exciting. Wow.
Yes. And the founder's children will be here for the 50th anniversary.
Oh, that's
Fabulous.
lovely. Yeah.
The founder died 2 years later. He established the center. Chris Young was his name. And he was looking for academic places where such a center could be hosted. And our university offered it and said, we will, in perpetuity, we will sponsor the center. And since then, it has been here. And we have had projects with and around Afghanistan. Our first sister university of the University of Nebraska Omaha was Kabul University and is Kabul University. We established this relationship with Kabul University in 1975. And you know what? The vice chancellor of Kabul University, who visited Omaha in 1975, now he lives in Omaha. His family lives in Omaha.
Wow.
Wasn't that interesting?
Yes. So there's a deep connection between Nebraska, Omaha, and Kabul, Afghanistan, or Afghanistan itself. Our faculty went and taught in Kabul University at that time, but we were more active during the refugee crisis when the Soviet invasion happened. We helped the Afghan refugees with school books and everything, teacher training in Pakistan for 30 years, more than 30, till post 9/11. And then we had an office. We moved it back to Kabul. We assisted the Afghan Minister of Education with millions of books. We printed them in 2003. We restarted the Fulbright recruitment procedure in Afghanistan. We trained more than 8,000 teachers in the last 20 years in Kabul and throughout the country. We brought them here. I ran a few projects. I became the director of the center on January 1st, 2016. And I helped establish, with the help of our faculty in 2 universities actually, a brand new degree program of communication studies. At Kabul University and Balkh University, we redid the curriculum for master's degree of hydrotechnical engineering, hydraulics and hydrotechnical engineering at Kabul Polytechnic University. It's a master's program. We did the 4-year degree program, actually renewed the business curriculum for American University of Afghanistan, which is now in exile. And we work with many other universities across the country. And then I expanded the scope of the center to go beyond Afghanistan. So I now have activities in Pakistan and had activities in India and have activities in partnerships in Central Asia. Last visit I had was December of 2021. I was in Kazakhstan.
Wow.
Interesting.
And before that, I was in Kabul, before COVID, actually. And right now I have projects in Pakistan. So we bring in teachers from there. So unfortunately, we don't have any project right now in Afghanistan, but we have here activities on Afghanistan. We have immersion seminars, and I teach political science, actually geopolitics of Central Asia and South Asia.
Your center just sounds incredibly active. You're teaching. What other projects specifically, what other research are you involved in right now?
Well, at the moment, I have 2 projects going on. They are in Pakistan. We are working with a university, a women-only university in Pakistan, in a city that I grew up in. We are bringing those university professors to learn new things about how to teach environmental subjects, sustainability, climate change, so they can go back and establish courses in the universities. And the other project is we're bringing Pakistani high school teachers, English language teachers, for pedagogy training. I don't have right now a research program going on. I had the water resources project that I completed, and as a result of that, I only have a book published.
And what's the title of the book?
The Transboundary Waters of Afghanistan.
We'll add a link on our notes pages.
I would imagine water is probably a valuable resource in Afghanistan.
It is. The co-author is the co-founder of the center.
Of your center in Omaha.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the book. That's exciting. When
Thank you
did it
very
come
much.
out?
It's a couple of years ago.
Okay.
We did teach it, offered it as a textbook for one of our classes.
Oh, nice. Well, what's the best way for people to keep in touch with you and see what you're working on?
Just Google the Center for Afghanistan Studies. We are the only study center on Afghanistan that has been here in existence for the last 50 years.
In the United
in
States?
the United States, the oldest on Afghanistan in the United
To
States.
think that people in Afghanistan know about
Oh, they
Nebraska.
know. Oh, they know. Nebraska is quite famous in Afghanistan.
That's amazing to me.
Nebraska is very famous in Afghanistan because of our center.
Yeah, you're really there. You're impacting the people and the cultures. That's so wonderful.
Correct.
Well, thank you for stopping by and talking to Nancy and I.
Well, no problem. I'm really happy. Thank you very much for having me.
I feel like I want to just go have dinner and hear more about this. This was just absolutely fascinating.
Well, if you happen to be back in Omaha sometime, we'd love to meet.
Yes, I would too. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness, Nancy, wasn't that so interesting?
It's fabulous. Yeah.
I loved that he loves the people and the country that he was born in. Even though he was raised partially there, he doesn't really remember it more as a child. But when he said, that's my country and that's kind of where I belong, I think everybody understands what that would feel like. Like, those are your people, that's your country. Of course you want to go back.
And then how great that kind of in a full circle, he is now helping not only his country of birth, but he's also helping the community that he was raised in Pakistan, and even beyond that, helping the whole region with his connections. It's a tragic story, but also a beautiful story.
Well, and the work that he's doing there with the center. How about the work that he did when he was still in his 20s with a high school diploma, but he could speak English, so he got the job. But wow, what a career, what a life. And it plays so well off of the decades of this book, because when he's this little boy, he's fleeing the country. When Nadia's character is a little girl, she was about 10, she's fleeing the country.
Yes.
We're covering Afghanistan by decades. We're seeing the different regimes, the people that are in charge, and then what is happening to the people and the culture as a result.
Yeah, I just thought this added a whole new layer of understanding to the book. One of the things I've loved this month is just learning more about Afghanistan. And I'll tell you, I have admired that center at the University of Nebraska Omaha for many years. I've heard of the center and followed the amazing work they've done. So it was just a real joy for me to have a chance to visit with the center director. And now this is being run by a native Afghan. It's just wonderful.
I really liked the personal touch that he gave too, that everybody's just people.
Yes.
And we got to understand people. It's important to understand the government and the structure, of course, but you have to sit with people and understand where they are, what they've been through, so that we see people as people, not different because they're raised in a different area.
And I think that often we make the mistake of conflating people with the governments that are running their countries.
Sure. I'm sure people do that to Americans.
Definitely.
You know, they're like, well, they're an American. Yeah, but it doesn't mean...
Right. So these are the things they must believe because that is what their government is doing. Well, it's our government, but it may not represent what we personally believe or would do. I think you're exactly right. People are people. We all want to be able
to put food on the table, right? He said, put food on the table. That's what we want to do.
We would like to feed our families.
Yes. That would be good.
Yeah. We love our children. We want them to have opportunities.
Get an education.
Yeah. And we don't want our loved ones to be in harm's way. And in so many parts of the world, loved ones are in harm's way.
Yeah, his family sure was.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine, Nance?
No.
You have these little people that are in your charge. Your husband is murdered. You have to make it over that mountain with little ones. And it's your grandmother, too. It's your mom. Oh, my goodness.
It's your grandma and your sister and you, and then your whole bunch of kids immigrating to a whole different country.
Different culture.
Yeah.
Different language. I just can't imagine. I look at those women And I think how brave they must have been.
Yeah.
But how scared too. Like they may not have felt brave, but they looked around and like, it's time to get out of here. What a harrowing story they had.
Yeah.
Just trying to do that, but they were able to do it, and they were able to give Sher Jan a wonderful life and a good upbringing. He got to learn English, and that helped him get that really good job. I bet that mom's proud of him. What do you think?
Yeah.
She's looking back on that was worth that crazy trying to get across the border scheme. I did the right thing by him.
You're not kidding.
Well, this has been a super exciting month for us because not only did you and I get to jib jab about the book, and now we have Sher Jan and talking to him about it. We're doing 3 this month, Nance. Because we got the author.
That's right.
And that's going to make 3 for us. This is our first 3-drop month. And it's been super exciting to learn about Afghanistan. So we're really excited to bring our author next.
Yeah, and we have actually already recorded that interview, and Nadia was absolutely a delight to visit with, and we hear more about her own personal story and her approach to writing. It's just going to be something I think our listeners are really going to enjoy.
And I hope everybody picks up sparks like stars, because you and I can go on and on and on about this book and everything that we've learned. So stay tuned for our next one. You'll really love that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Our website is thefrontporchbookclub.com.
Well, I'll see you next time, Lenny.
All right. Thanks, Nance. Bye.
Bye-bye.